I'm glad my mom died. I'm buying it. Hey, I'm James Burnham, and this is my segment where I get to react to a video that I've never seen before. Today I'm going to watch a short segment from Jennette McCurdy from The Daily Show. She's going to talk about the long-term impact of toxic parents. Let's see what she has to say. This girl's funny. I want to see.
Please welcome Jennette McCurdy.
Please welcome. Yes, there she is. I can't see any impact of toxic parenting yet.
Welcome to The Daily Show.
I feel so short. My feet aren't touching.
Oh, that's fine. As long as like you can swing them.
I can swing them around.
Yeah, it's as long as you enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
I can lower the desk as well if you'd like.
This is good.
Okay, good. Okay, I can't actually do it. I'm glad you asked me to do it. Welcome to the show, and congratulations on writing a book that I think for many people is seen as not just something funny, not just a story that's interesting, but in many ways a cathartic exploration of how we see the relationships that we have with many of our parents, our caregivers, whoever it was in our world. Because you wrote a book entitled, I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Yeah.
And it is a massive hit. So 2 questions. 1, did you hate your mom? And 2, does everybody?
No, I definitely don't hate my mom. I think she was a really complicated and nuanced person, and I try to kind of articulate her to the best of my ability in all of her many shades and colors. To me, her humor is really, she could say things that were so wild and at times abusive, but she just had a certain cadence and a rhythm that was so humorous, so I tried to capture that, but I certainly didn't hate her, and I think that's why it was so important for me to write this book, because getting to the place where I was finally glad and relieved that she was dead, you know, it took me so.
Wow. So she says some powerful things here, right? And this is the beauty of our human emotional makeup, right? She says, I'm glad, the title of the book is I'm Glad My Mom Died. And it's a huge hit, right? And he's like, does that mean that you hated your mom and that everyone hates their mom? Because that's like a natural conclusion. But the reality is all of our parents screwed up. All of them did. Because they're just humans and they're trying the best they can. And if you're not a parent yet, I remember the day I took my son home, my firstborn, and I held this boy in my arms and I looked down at him and I thought, oh my gosh, the buck stops here. Like if this kid cries and nobody can get him to stop, nobody can. It's me. I got to get this figured out. It was terrifying. And all the mistakes I've made, well, they're going to mess up my kids for sure. And they hate me and they love me. Just as I hated my parents and I love my parents. It is the nature of who we are. In fact, they say that it is more important to keep, if you can, establishing a relationship with a child's biological parents rather than let them separate, even if, say, their dad's in prison. Just to keep that going is actually helpful for the social development. Interesting, right?
That she was dead. You know, it took me so long to be able to accept that reality. And I also think that's something that people, I didn't hear anybody talking about. I didn't hear anybody saying, you know, that the sort of honest reality of what their experience with their parent was if they had a similar one. It feels like a thing that you can't say because society doesn't accept it. It's just you have to keep moms on a pedestal and we all have to have the same experience. And that just wasn't mine, so it felt even more important to express it in the book. You go through your entire journey. Many people, you know, in America and some parts of the world will remember you from iCarly. You were this massive child star, and on the camera.
No, I never saw it.
Everybody enjoyed what you were doing. As soon as you read through the book, you realize you were suffering, you were experiencing trauma. It was really abusive in how you were doing what you were doing. It feels like in many ways you were living your mom's dream and she was making you do this.
Yeah.
I would love to know how you did it. Like, did you have a switch? Did you compartmentalize? Because you talk about it in the book, but you could never tell. You could never tell on screen what you were going through.
No. So my mom always wanted to be an actress. Her dream was to be famous. And she would recount sort of these tales of how her parents wouldn't let her. She would camp out in front of Donny Osmond's house, bring him like posters. Chris Knight, who played Peter Brady in the Brady Bunch, she swore like, oh, they had a relationship. I think that was not true.
Isn't that funny? This is such a common thing. A parent that doesn't get to pursue their own dream because of whatever situation with their family, now with their child, makes their child fulfill the dream they never got to live. That's hard. That's hard on a kid. It's hard as a parent, I think, to let your kid thrive too and not push them toward the stuff you love. I loved playing basketball and volleyball, and I wanted one of my kids to go into one of those sports, and none of them did. And I could have really coached them in that space, and I could have really drove them and helped them excel because I was good in those spaces, because that wasn't their interest. It wasn't where they wanted to go. And I had to catch myself many times where I was like, oh, I really would love to push my kid into this because I wanted them to have the support that I never had. My dad didn't play basketball or volleyball. He didn't know how to support me in that space, but I sure knew how to help. If they would just choose the path that I wanted, I could get them to the next level, right? These are the thoughts that go on as a parent. And here's a child that experienced the pain of that.
True. Chris Knight, if you're watching, please let me know if my mom actually had a relation with you. But so she was always fascinated with kind of Hollywood and the aura and the romance as she saw it. And so she put me in acting when I was 6 to kind of give, I think, in my eyes, it was to live vicariously through me and to fulfill her dream and what she had always wanted. But
it seems like she subjected you to a nightmare.
Yeah.
Because you were in a world where it's supposed to be fun. You know, you're making kids television, and yet it seems pretty horrible. I also wonder if this is the relationship of many child stars, or do you know, was this isolated, or do you think this is a lot more normal than we'd like to admit?
I think it's way more common than anyone would care to admit. I know just from my experience of going into auditions countless times, I'd have like 103 fever, my mom would be having me chug Gatorade, I'd be walking in to like pretend to be a homeless child, which is just already so kind of messed up as it is. Then there's these you know, dozens of other girls lined up to also try and be this homeless child, and the moms are like eyeing each other and like, oh, I hope my daughter's better at being homeless than yours. And it's like, this is so, what is this world? It's so weird. But I am able to now kind of look back and see the humor.
Yeah, the whole child actor thing is a fascinating thing, right? Because you hear this story, it's been repeated by actors who have been child actors over and over and over again. They're pressed into this acting, the competitive nature, the rejection, all of that stuff for a child facing it, the pressure from their parents to succeed, the loss of maybe a part that you wanted and you didn't get, and that rejection makes you feel like you failed your parents. It creates a real triangulation of pain for these child actors. And I mean, my kids were adorable. And I remember I was living in California at the time. Several times I had child talent scouts or whatever come up to me, and they would give me their card and be like, your kid's adorable, super gregarious, bring them in to act. And it's enticing to think about, right? Because you can make a lot of money. If your kid is, you know, that gregarious and good, that's a great way to make some money. But that's child labor, and you're making money off your kid. And what if your kid doesn't want to do it? And so I always just left it to the space of, if my kid comes to me and says, I want to do this, I'll support you. But I'm not going to throw you into that. But that's kind of the way I was raised. My parents didn't sign me up for anything except for music, which I resisted. But they never signed me up for sports until I pleaded and I had to pay for myself. So how do you find that balance? As a parent, it's hard. This girl clearly was on the short end of the stick when it came to acting with her relationship with her mom.
I can see the humor in it, and I think it is a very absurd reality, but I do think there's a lot of inherent ironic humor there.
I think what you've done in the book is precisely that. You've looked back and you've seen the humor. You use the humor, because this book without the humor is a devastating tale of a young child who is put into a world. It really seems.
It would be so awful. Oh my God.
I don't know if it would be awful. I think it would be a lot harder for people to read. I think it would be painful, because it is still the real thing. You know, I wouldn't even think of it as a pity grab, but the humor is a coping mechanism. It's a tool you processing your life through. There's a point in the book where I find myself reading the stories of your mom, understanding the complicated world that she existed in, but then wondering like how you see her? Like, did you forgive her? Were you able to let it all go? Do you still hold some of those feelings? Like, what has your journey been?
Oh my God, what a big, good question. That's such a deep, like, this is what I spent 10 years in therapy to be able to now say on The Daily Show. That's so cool. That's really awesome. Well, I'm glad you initially, you were speaking kind of the humor, and I do think it's a great coping mechanism, and I try not to use it as a defense mechanism. I used it that way for a long time initially when I was first kind of trying to grapple with everything, and I think that led to really unfunny choices, and my sense of humor is just sort of overcompensatory and kind of flailing and obnoxious, to be honest. But I think finding humor in those really intense moments and that those tragedies can bring levity where it's necessary. I hope I've done that. With my mom, I haven't gotten to a place of forgiveness, and I was trying to get to a place of forgiveness for so long. In therapy, I would sort of plead almost with my therapist of like, why am I not able to get to this place? What's wrong with me that I'm not able to forgive my mom for this abuse? Why am I?
This is fascinating for me. I actually have written a book. I wrote it in third person. And when I finished, I realized I needed to change it, and I'm halfway through rewriting it in first person because I talk about my abuse as a kid and the visceral impact it had on my whole life. And because of my memories, I perceived my parents in a way I was not able to remember what had happened to me as a little kid for years. And so it had an impact on how I perceived my parents and my relationship with them. And I struggled with my feelings of anger that I had toward them for years until I was able to get my memories back and realize, oh, they weren't responsible for that stuff. They have their own things like every parent, but my parents were really good parents. And I was able to get to a place of forgiveness. She hasn't gotten there. And it was so nice to be freed from that. But I have been troubled mostly about my book because it's so lacking. It's so dark. When we talk about that stuff, when you think about a little 4 to 8 year old kid getting abused and sexually molested by a predator, that's a horrific thing. And there's some horrific stuff that happens to a child. But my life, even now, as I look at the full spectrum of it, I look at my life with real joy. It was funny. I had a lot of crazy stuff go on, and I'm going to read this book. I haven't read it because I want to see how she did it, because that is the truth. If you get too immersed in the emotional pain of whatever it is you face, you lose your perspective. And I love the fact that she was able to use humor not as a deflecting technique, but to give you that space to see the nuance and the complexity of everything that she was facing that is so far beyond just a mother and a daughter having a difficult time. Really cool. I'm super fascinated. I'm going to check this book out.
Why am I so terrible that I can't get to that place? And she eventually said, Jennette, what if you just kind of dropped forgiveness and didn't make that your goal? Because that's you still trying to do your mom's work. I couldn't, yeah, right? I mean, that's exactly my reaction. I to Aaron, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a journey that I think far too many people have been on. I think a lot of the success of the book has been that obviously it's well written, obviously it's fantastically told, but it is a very complicated topic. How do you address the lack of love or the lack of parenting that you were supposed to get from that figure? Because as you say, mom is supposed to be this god, this icon of everything.
Yep.
Dad in some ways as well, but not the same. And yet you're in a world where you're going, oh no, it's true. People be like, oh, dad, well, my dad was okay, but mom is untouchable.
Or even with dads, you can be like, oh, my dad never showed up, and people are like, oh, mine neither,
Right.
And then it's totally
Right.
normal. But I feel like with moms, it is very, very much there's this
That's
pedestal
a tragedy to me. That is such a tragedy, and it isn't true. Honestly, all of the studies they have shown, the impact of a man in a child's life is so significant to their development in every way. And we have, as a culture, systematically undermined the importance of men in relationships, particularly with their children. 70% of all men that are divorced never have a relationship with their biological children again. That is a very, very telling statistic that has nothing to do with men wanting to walk away from their children. It has more to do with a culture that discounts the importance of that man. That bothers me, as you can tell.
When you broached this topic, when you started thinking about it, were you worried that people would turn on you?
I felt even if they did, it was a message worth sharing. I really mean that.
Wow, I love that.
Thanks.
I really do. That's
Thank
because
you.
that's a brave stance to take. Because a lot of people will be like, "How dare you talk about your mom like that?"
Yes.
It's actually, it's so crazy how, I mean, everything gets meme-ified, and you know, there was a post I saw online where someone was trying to chastise everybody for talking about the Queen, you know, in like just going like, we're glad this monarchy is ending in some way.
Yeah.
And someone was like, you think it's funny, try and replace the Queen with your mom and see how funny it is. And someone put a picture of your book up, and then it was like, I'm glad the Queen died. And it feels like, no, but it feels like that's what the book is dealing with, is you dealing with the idea of a mom and how that competes or conflicts with your actual mom.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. That should be on the back flap.
Yeah, it should. That is so true, right? We love to get sound bites that are easily packageable, easy to metabolize, and to be able to say, yeah, that's what it is, you know, and just leave it and keep it even in the kosher lane. But when you get into the reality of life, it is messy. It is full of breakups and hardship and successes and wins and failures. But to capture the whole nuance of that is rare, because it's much easier to just go for the standard boom, 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 get it done and make everyone feel good. So it's cool when somebody's able to create a balance that is nuanced and entertaining. I like it.
I can write it.
I wish you would.
You shared your story with us. You've gone through a world. Now you are back in the world of entertainment in a very different way. You're behind the camera. You're directing. You're writing. You've got a podcast. It's interesting because it's a world that was so toxic to you, and now you've come back in a different way. Do you ever worry that it may suck you back in, and how do you prevent yourself from going back into that space of feeling like you're defined by the everythingness that you hated once?
Oh my God. I'm so. Can I just say I respect you so much? This is so cool. I'm so happy to be here. Truly, like this is amazing.
Thank you very much.
I have been scared of that. There have been a few times when I've done some press that shall not be named, where it's so bizarre because I'm like hearing the pre-roll of, you know, they show like the clip of me from the past or whatever, and it's so dramatic. It's like McCurdy vanished from the spotlight after her traumatic childhood with the trauma and the devastation. It's like, geez, can we calm down? And then I'm like walked out to this, you know, to this like cold, domineering kind of set, and then there's the journalist, and there's 3 inches of makeup on the guy's face, and it's just like, you know, it does feel kind of, it feels easy to lose sight of reality in these environments. And so I really try to keep myself grounded and stay on top of, you know, therapy and being in touch with things that really are good touchstones and grounding tools for me, because I do not want to get lost in it. But also I will say I trust that I won't. I don't think I had the tools before to not get lost in it and to not feel sort of caught up in the whirlwind of showbiz.
Right.
But now I feel like, you know what, there are some elements that are really cool about it, like this, and then there are some that aren't, and that's fine. I can use my own discernment and just be grateful for the good experiences.
I like that. So she has, in a very real sense, glimpsed behind the curtain. She's seen the Wizard of Oz when it comes to the marketing machine of Hollywood and all that goes around it. And when she hears her book and the announcements they make, and all of it is meant to titillate and excite and get people in a frenzy because we respond emotionally, right? And so then we're interested and we engage. But it is not a true representation of her experience in the book that she wrote, because they're not doing a nuanced presentation, they're doing a marketing presentation. And she can feel the difference because she has done the work within herself to be able to stand there and hear that and say, okay, whatever, that's what it is, but this is me. This is what I am. And she's not pulled into that. And that's a sign of somebody that's really done some powerful work, so that they can stand in this very place and not be triggered by the very thing that hurt her in the past. I love that. Too often I see people that have something toxic in their life happen and they shut themselves off entirely from it, never experiencing anything remotely close to it again because it hurt them. That's no way to live. Live with bravery. Heal yourself. Walk back into that space and look at it and say, yeah, I know what that is. That doesn't hurt me because I'm stronger than this. That's what she's done. Love to see this.
Experiences.
Well, we're grateful for you. Thank you for writing the book.
Thank you.
Really wonderful having you.
Thank you so
For
much.
real. Thank you so much.
I'm going to read this
Glad
book.
My Mom Died. It's available now wherever you buy your
I'm glad my mom died. I'm buying it. Hey, if you're in a situation where you're glad your mom died, maybe read this book and figure out how to see some humor and nuance and get yourself beyond it. And stick around. I got another video coming up. I'm going to react to dating on TikTok. The last one I did, I got crazy responses and got some people mad because they think that I'm being misogynistic or sexist or biased. I don't know. I felt like it was a miscommunication and they didn't understand. Maybe I'm going to be really bad again. So that might be something you want to watch. Thanks for joining me. I'm James Burnham. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow.